Are you looking for new books to read? Do you like finding a new special author? Are you tired of the same old books from the same old authors? Well then, welcome to Discovered Wordsmiths, a podcast where you can hear from fantastic new authors. Join Stephen Schneider as he finds and talks to authors you may not know, but authors that have worked hard to write great new books. Hear about their book and why you should check it out. So sit back and listen to today's Discovered Wordsmith.
Welcome to a new episode of Discovered Wordsmiths. This is a special episode. It's a little different. I have another podcast called Relentless Geekery that I do with my friend Alan Baltis. And on that episode, we interviewed Ted Sikora. He is from Cleveland, does a graphic novel comic book called Apama, and he has a new one coming out called Bloom. When we interviewed him, he was working on his Kickstarter for Bloom. Alan and I both love the stories, the art, everything about the Apama series, and we wanted to make our first guest someone special, and we asked Ted. He said yes. It was a great time, good interview. But because Ted's a writer, I thought it would be a great episode to listen to for Discovered Wordsmiths. I know most people probably don't know who he is, and it's a shame because I really love what he's done. So this is a little different of an episode. It's not your normal fiction or nonfiction, but I love what he's done. This is something you should check out. Even though the Kickstarter is over, you can still go to herotomorrow.com, order any of the books from Ted, any of his comics, check it out on Comixology. They are fun. They are really reminiscent of the 70s if you're like that era of comic books, or if you just want to read something that's not your typical Marvel DC superheroes. Enjoyed the interview, and if you haven't figured it out, the other voice you hear is my friend Alan. I did edit this one down quite a bit. It's still a little longer than normal, but there's a lot of good information, a lot of good things Ted says about his path, his journey, and working with Kickstarter. So enjoy.
Ted, is a delight to have you here, everybody. This is Ted Sikora, who is a longtime comic book creator, movie creator, head of Hero Tomorrow Enterprises. I'm not sure if I have exactly the word, but has done all kinds of things that I have first stumbled onto at a Comic-Con and then began to actively follow because I loved the quality of the work.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so I'm sure, and hopefully, we've got some people out there going, I've never heard of this guy. Who is he? So go ahead, Ted, do some unabashed bragging about yourself.
Tell us all about how happy you are to be doing what you're doing.
Oh my gosh. Well,
wow, there's no leading question there.
That's great. Hey, thank you so much, guys, for having me on the show today. You picked up on things that I hope we are accomplishing, that we're trying to do comics in a modern way, in a new setting, but with a nod to the classics that we grew up loving so much. And, trying to almost take like the Bronze Age of comics and evolve them in a different direction than the way things did evolve. So we kept, the big captions on the cover and all the hype and, these kind of
exactly
larger than life arcs that, you really can't get from Marvel or DC anymore. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just the fact that it's very hard to create an impactful Batman or Spider-Man story anymore. There's just so much.
When they have 70 years of mythology to be beholden to. Yeah.
And when you start with a brand new universe and there's no superheroes when it starts, every villain is introduced and it's like, wow, we've just increased the villain population by 50%, some of the reviews have really liked that. They've called that out, that it's just refreshing to be in a universe where you can be on board from the top. And it's obviously told with a passion for what, Lee, Kirby, and Ditko, Romita, what they created.
I was going to say that's what I really loved. I mean, I met you at one of the Wizard Worlds and just said, oh, local guy. Okay, I'll check it out. Why not? And I got it, and it sat for a while. I'm like, okay, I helped him out. And then I started reading, and I'm reading it going, wait a second, is this a reprint from something I missed back in the 70s? I'm like, oh my God, this is just like, I'm like, this is great. And then, you get the different characters and villains, and I'm laughing because, they're not like these super powered. It's like some guy pulled a suit out of his garbage can and put it on to be a superhero. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. It's that it's not the spandex, it's not the shiny. It was more normal average guy feel, but they get something weird that happens to them. And and in fact, I didn't Ilya say this smells like a rotten suit or something like that when he first got it. And I love
Yeah.
Because
Found it in a cave.
it was always a quandary in Spider-Man, like how does he wash his costume without having Aunt May find out about it? And so, it's just that you can't wear a superhero costume on patrol for 10 days in a row without getting.
But what I was going to say is, what I loved about Marvel as opposed to DC is that the person behind the mask is so much more important, and at least in my opinion, I was a Peter Parker guy. I growing up, I felt that character. He related to me, and I related to him. And it was just sort of, there was a magic there that I never felt with Clark Kent or Bruce Wayne. And I would pick up Superman or Batman for 10 issue runs, and I was like, I'm just going to stick with my Marvel people, And I guess when it came to creating Ilya, my father used to have a tire store in Akron, and many summers or after schools, weekends, I'd be down there changing tires. I was 13 years old changing tires with these guys. And I just never felt like those kind of dudes were ever represented as sort of an alter ego. And so we made Ilya just sort of this, blue collar is almost an upgrade for what he drives an ice cream truck, and he really just any little side job to get by kind of guy. And I think it's really just kind of taking what Stan and Steve did with Peter Parker and trying to make him even more relatable. And, like if Peter Parker shows up in a at a party, he's the most brilliant person there. Ilya is probably the dumbest.
So you said you liked Spider-Man. What are some of your favorite Spider-Man stories? Because we talk about comics and stuff like that every day.
Oh gosh, I have Amazing Spider-Man from issue 141 on. I've stopped a couple times for short runs where there was an episode. It was 6 or 7 years ago. He was driving around in a spider submarine, and I'm like, this sucks. I'm done. I gave it up for like just a couple years, and then I came back in. I thought Superior Spider-Man was terrific, but I'm about to drop it again. I think it's horrible. It's gotten so bad. So I started 141. It was really, and I've gone back and I've got a lot of the issues between 100 and 150. My favorite run, gosh, and I've read them all. I have all the omnibuses or whatever to go back. I loved some Marvel team up stuff as well. Like when I think of my favorite Spider-Man story, there's a Marvel team up with the Man-Thing where they fight Despair. That issue, it's like issue 72 or something. It just strikes me as such a great heroic story because Spidey's beaten down so bad, but the way he comes back in that one, it just when I think of it, that's the story that pops in my head. Mysterio was always my favorite villain. He was the villain in issue 141.
There you go. Exactly.
So, and I have the Electro as well because I just love that old costume too. Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut. I loved Carrion. I thought he was such a great villain and should have been a top 10 rogues gallery, but they screwed him up so bad. In fact, if I ever had the chance to write Spider-Man, I would do something with Carrion, and he would be the most badass character in his whole rogues. And let's see, Moon Knight was another character I loved. Oh my God, the first run of Moon Knight with Bill Sienkiewicz and Doug Mensch. Oh, that is. Let
me ask, your newest book is Bloom, and she first appeared in the Tap Dance Killers series. I haven't caught up with all of it yet.
It was actually in Apama number 5, and Yeah, she is and we did that on purpose again, because like in Fantastic Four #5, they introduced Doctor Doom. So we were like, all right, issue 5, this is where we bring in the big nemesis of the whole arc.
Dr. Doom.
So yeah, she's been in the shadows or in the foreground throughout that series. And she's been a bit of a mystery, you know, and Apama starts kind of he feels like he's being pulled into the forest, and he meets Regina and this whole cult, and they've been waiting for him for a long time. And, you know, before he meets them, he comes upon this area of trees where there's these burlap little sacks with the Apama face, you know, kind of painted onto the sack. And he's like, what is this? He opens it up, and it's all these heads of animals and humans. Yes. And it's like this weird calling for him. So then when he meets Regina, and he just can't do anything against her, because she's been waiting for him and she even, one of the lines in Apama 5 is, I missed Woodstock because of you. And he's like, what are you talking about? And so this is Bloom is going back to 1969, and we're seeing exactly what happened to make this. You know, so all right, we're seeing her origin, and to set up the origin, Bloom is about a guy who is trying to create a comic book in 1969, and he has an idea for a villain. He was tripping in the woods on acid, and he's an artist, you know, and he was seeing all these symbols floating around him, and he starts sketching them all out, and he's like, oh, this is great, you know, but he was feeling, at the time he was working on his superhero character, and these symbols made him forget something about it. And so he always thought that these symbols feel like the anti of my hero, so they're going to be the villain. And so he buys a mannequin. He's painting these symbols on the mannequin. His fiance is like, what are you doing? This is evil looking. He's like, yeah, but this isn't the Donna Reed show, you know? So basically he goes to a street fair, and the Hessler Street Fair in Cleveland, and which I found out actually did take place in 1969 for the first time. So I was like, oh my God, that's perfect. So that's awesome. He meets this dancer, Regina, and he's like, you know, you'd be a really neat inspiration for my villain. And she laughs and says, all right, let's do it, man, whatever. They go out into the woods. He paints the symbols onto her body. And then she starts to break on through to the other side. And it's the story of the two of them in the woods, as, you know, Ramsey, the comic book artist, is, you know, devout atheist, versus Regina, who believes everything. And they are having a real go at it in the woods. And it's I'm happy to say it's been getting really good reviews so far, and you know, our campaign's doing pretty well. We just crossed $8,000, so we're well over our goal. It ends on the 28th.
My experience of your books is often that they're very cinematographic. Do you have all that kind of in your head, how you want it to look like? Do you know, it shows in the artwork. Are you informing your artist how you want it to look, or is it more Marvel style where you're saying, hey, draw something?
Well, Butch Mappa, who's the artist on the series, he actually beat out 200 other artists that submitted to this. So what I really loved about his work, you know, before we talk about the psychedelic and the wild, was the human quality. You know, that it was so much about these two characters, and I needed to see two characters that, just looking at them, I felt for them, both of them. You know, Regina can't be this overly sexualized, you know, vampy woman, and Ramsey needs to look like a guy that you feel like he's one of your buds, you know. So when I had these people, you know, I had a lot of artists do tryouts and things, and yes, he kept rising to the top. And so regarding the, you know, the way we approach scenes and things, and the film, yeah, I mean, when I made the movie Hero Tomorrow, one of the things I did was, you know, I directed it. I co-wrote it with Milo Miller. We both produced it. When I made it, we made it. It was a lot of people involved. I storyboarded the entire film, 1,500 images. And it really, because I hadn't made a feature film or anything like that before, that's where I learned kind of this thing that was maybe in my subconscious from reading comics all my life about this visual, sequential storytelling. And I do find it translates quite a bit. And so sometimes, usually the way we work is I will write a scripted page. I give it to the artist and they give me a really rough layout, and I will then put that right into Illustrator. I'll put all my captions in and see if it's working, if it's flowing. And about half the time I will make layout revisions and, make sure that things are flowing in a certain direction. We're not crossing the action line. A lot of cinematography things that I think a lot of comic artists aren't necessarily familiar with, but I do find if we apply them to the comics, it just makes for a seamless transition. Because ultimately, I just want the reader to not even be thinking about how we made it and just being immersed in the story. So then,
Yes.
Getting into the psychedelic effects and that kind of thing, we build it together as we go, but I'm always careful I never want any of our stuff to be something that the reader is like, oh, what the hell was that? I don't even know what happened on that page. That's a big pet peeve of mine when a moment happens in a comic and I'm like, man, they didn't even try here to you can tell that was like the first attempt at a layout and they just said we're running out of time or something. And so the thing we have on the independent side is that advantage of time. We don't have to get these out every month and we can just do them until they're right. And if we're not going to put every ounce of quality we can into it, then there's no point in doing it.
And it, like Alan said earlier, it definitely shows. It's when I bought the first one, I got soft cover and I had to go back and get hardcover. So now that's why I got the hardcover of Tap Dance Killer. And I these are special. I need these on my shelf. So that definitely shows in what you're doing.
Appreciate it.
A quick question. Yeah. So you've got offshoots of Apama with the Tap Dance Killer and Bloom and Punchline. When you created these offshoots, were you thinking of that originally? Like, oh, I want this character to come in on the 6th issue and be an offshoot story of its own? Or did it evolve after you wrote them and said, hey, I really like this, I got other ideas?
The analogy I like to use is the way I look at writing this is we are on a road trip, driving across the country and we're not taking any highways. I know where we're headed, but if we see something interesting along the way, we are going to stop and explore. We're going to check into the motel. We're going to try the diner everybody recommends. So like this, Tap Dance Killer was not really on the radar of the big thing that was happening between Apama and Regina. What happened is I was, I do film work as well. And I was doing this documentary for Near West Theater. It was coincidentally, Ilya lives at West 65th and Detroit Avenue. Near West Theater was building their new location at Gordon Square, 2 blocks, right, 1 block away, 67th in Detroit. And I said, hey, what if I tell this to Milo, what if Ilya's at the coffee shop and some, cute gal comes in and she's got flyers for the musical and she's like, hey, we're auditioning. It's community theater thing. You want to come down? Ilya's like, I'm tired of getting my ass kicked as a superhero and why not do something fun? And so, and plus I might get a chance of picking up her digits, and so he goes to this audition and we just ran with this idea completely out of order from what we were wanting to tell. And for me, Apama 10 and 11, this 2-parter is one of the things I'm most proud of in my entire career. I just love it. And so here we are. I'm showing this book off at like New York Comic Con, really where it was very palpable. People were coming up and going, who is this character? Who is this Tap Dance Killer? What's this about? And I would tell her, oh, that's Nikki St. Clair. She's a mega talented actor. She gets cast in a horror show musical, then gets permanently locked into the role and starts trying to wipe out the mafia. And they were buying the prints of her. Images of her were being liked and shared on Facebook by the thousands, which was not happening with Apama, no matter how much we tried. So I was like, all right, well, why don't we give Tap Dance Killer a try here? And then in Tap Dance Killer, I had the opportunity to introduce a character who was intended to be an Apama villain, Punchline. I always like the idea of this heavyweight boxer who becomes a superpowered murderous clown named Punchline, you know. And 2 years before DC, ours debuted, by the way. So anyway, when Tap Dance Killer had its first 5-issue arc, I thought, man, this is a Punchline really wasn't challenged all that much in that first series. And I thought this is a great opportunity now to continue the story of these vaudevillains, and let Punchline take the lead. And, Nikki will still be in it, but now more in a supporting role.
I love that.
Again, I'm happily drawing the parallels. They had any number of times where what they thought was a one-shot kind of a throwaway character just caught the public's imagination, that wonderful lightning in a bottle. It's very cool that you had that experience.
Stan Lee said that about J. Jonah Jameson. Like, he was just sort of a toss-off character in one of those first issues. And then, you're just writing stories and you're like, you know what, I think I'll come back to that guy again.
I forget the actor's name, the guy who plays him in the movies. He's so perfect. I mean, he is that character.
J.K. Simmons.
Yeah, J.K. Simmons. Let me ask you, so
Exactly.
You've pretty much used Kickstarter for all of this, have you not?
We did. We did it a little strange in that we first when we made the movie, we thought, wouldn't it be fun to do the issue number 1 of the book that was in our character's head, Apama. So we just did that digitally, put it on the website, and it was getting really nice reviews. And we had so much fun making that comic. We thought, well, we weren't even thinking of selling it. Then we did a second issue, put that on the website. And the thing is, we were finding is we were getting lots of reads on it. People were writing nice reviews, but we weren't selling any more movies of Hero Tomorrow. So we thought, well, then Comixology happened, and we started selling them on Comixology. And when we got to issue 5, which was that first Regina story, we decided to do a Kickstarter and go into print for the first time. And we were just terrified of doing anything in print. It just seemed like such a world that was foreign and alien to us. But we raised about $14,000 on that first Kickstarter. And then we decided to just hold back all the single issues and just do a volume 2, which was issues 6 through 11 of Apama volume 2. And then when Tap Dance Killer was debuted and I decided to do single issue, or I decided to give her own series, I didn't want to wait. Now the thing I forgot to mention was Diamond picked up the Apama volume 1 trade, and we were very fortunate to get in with them, and they gave us a staff pick. They really liked it. They wrote a staff pick review of it. Volume 2, the same thing. They gave us a staff pick review. And
I remember that.
We're one of the few creator-owned companies that has like one single shared universe in Diamond. There's not a lot of that, and we're thrilled to be part of them. So with Tap Dance Killer, I was like, man, I don't want to wait till I have 5 issues and do a trade through Diamond. I said, why don't we try single issues for the first time? And then it was at that point we thought, Apama never had his single issues, and it always just came out as a trade, which was, we did things completely backwards. We did a movie before we did a comic, and then we did the trade before we did the single issues. But I think the single issues benefited from that because we were able to go back and remaster things. We changed some things, cut some things out, or tweak the dialogue. So, when people ask me, what's the first appearance of Apama? It's a complicated answer, because people collect single issues, and the Apama now exists in issues 1 through 11 with main and variant covers. And Apama 12, when that comes out, that will be a single issue first. And I think that will unite the whole single issue thing as being, these really are the first print single issues of that series, and the collectability of them. In my opinion, people just don't collect trades as they don't get them graded, that kind of thing. So I think, a couple years from now, or even now, do people really regard that our trade came out before the singles? Probably not.
While you're working now on Bloom, do you already have a certain number of issues kind of already done and you'll be releasing them over the course of time? Or is there still a kind of an ongoing, hey, we should probably get an issue out. It's the next month,
great
next
question.
Quarter, whatever else it might be.
Bloom was originally, it was in the ill-fated April 2020 preview guide. And, it was right before the shutdown. that I don't even know if that preview guide got distributed at all. And
Before
Diamond,
COVID.
my rep, said, "Hey, this is not looking good for a launch. Do you want to see if I can pull this?" And I said, "Please, yes, thank you, God." Our relationship with Diamond is great. The thing about it is we don't make enough with Diamond sales to pay for these comics, to make them, the printing, the art, all that stuff. So even waiting without conventions, I'm just going to lose money on every book. So that wasn't really an option. Then we had never done a Kickstarter for a single issue before. That's why I decided to do Punchline #1 as a single and see how that went, how it was received. And it did great. It did close to 12 or 13,000. And I just thought, all right, this is really viable. And then I talked to some of my retailer friends and I said, hey, how would you feel if when this Bloom series is released, I'm also running a Kickstarter at the same time to make up for lost convention income? Like, I didn't want the retailers to be like, hey, I thought this was an exclusive Diamond thing and you're selling it on the side. I'm like, no. They were all really cool about it. They're like, no, you got to do what you got to do to survive. And
Right.
so, and I'm sure, look, our highest backer count on Kickstarter was Punchline. It had like 302 backers. So with 2,000 shops, that's not really going to be a big chunk of whatever they were going to sell. And I think it's largely not the same audience. So here we are. And, we've already raised enough to pay for the print run through the Kickstarter campaign. And that means the Diamond sales will be, in the black. So that's new for us.
Ted, I love you talking about that because, as Alan knows, I've been working on writing some novels and some middle grade fiction books, and it's been an adventure and a journey. We chat about it every now and then. But being in the author community, the indie publishing community, there's still a big mindset that, oh, you have to go and do this and then do this and then do this. But you're kind of proof you don't necessarily have to, whether it's comic books or novels. You can do what works best for you at that time and you're not beholden to others. And me personally, that's one of the things I love about what you've done with Apama and Tap Dance Killer and Bloom.
Oh, I appreciate that. I think it also comes from, knowing what it takes to make a movie, and how difficult that was or is as I just feel like, man, with comics, whatever you dream up goes right on the page. You're not trying to, find the budget for a location, in Apama, we go to the moon, we do anything. And it's so liberating. So yeah, I have to hire an artist and we have to produce the books, but compared to making a film, I just think this is the greatest thing ever. So yeah. And if writing a novel or whatever, you're in control of your destiny, and the further you can do, I think, get, on your own before you have to bring other people in, the better off you'll be, in many cases.
You're with Bloom, you're going back in time to like the late 60s, as you said. I missed Woodstock for this. Are you putting yourself in that kind of 60s frame of mind, but are you listening to the right music? Are you, how are you capturing that? How are you internalizing that and then reflecting it back out?
Oh, this is this gets weird and meta crazy. When I was making Regina for the Apama series, I knew I wanted so you guys, I don't know if you've ever heard of Helltown, but when I was growing up, there was this area near Peninsula that they would, in Boston Mills, where they referred to this sort of cult activity that was going on in the late 70s. And it turned out there was an area in the park that was overtaken by the government for the park system, but it used to be houses. So you'd be walking through the woods and you'd come upon these abandoned houses. So it became this area,
exactly.
Yeah, it became this area where people would just party and who knows what all, but it was referred to as Helltown. And I thought, man, this is a Northeast Ohio story. Let's have the Helltown cult. I just wanted that. And who's the leader of the Helltown cult? Well, I know I wanted a female because we had already done we have a guy hero, a guy villain was our first one. I thought, I want a female. I want her to, and I was on a video shoot. I remember we were shooting somebody and they had tattoos all over them, and they were explaining the power they were getting from each tattoo, which was something that I never had really thought about with tattoos. I thought of them as more graphic, and that just really, that then the bulb went off, and I was like, okay. So I started drawing this out in 2 dimensions, and I just couldn't get the vibe of what I wanted. I did a lot of revisions and iterations. And then I thought, you know what, if I get a mannequin, I will be able to see this in 3D space. And then I can give that to Benito Gallego, the artist, and I'll just photograph it from all angles. And we can keep these symbols on her body very, consistent. So I do that. I take that step. Subsequently, somewhere along that timeline, I'm shooting an event at Cleveland Public Theater, and I meet somebody in the crowd who's this dancer, and she's got the right look for Regina. I'm just like, wow, this could be, I wonder if I could get this person to do a photo shoot with me. So, I mean, this is very similar to the whole thing I just described about what Bloom is, right? And so we make a plan.
Exactly that.
we make a plan to go into the woods and shoot some photos, but I've never done anything like that, and our schedules are not aligning. So months are going by, and then who knows, 2 months, 3 months later, I'm just like, oh my God, what if I got her into the woods and we're doing this photo shoot? I don't know anything about this person. What if she really is this weird, like once she gets the symbols on her and there is something magic in the symbols. And then it was like, oh my God. I wrote a screenplay. I wrote this whole thing out, the origin of Regina, as a screenplay. It was Milo who gave me the title. When he read it, he said, because I was calling it, the muse or, villainess and all this of it. He said, what about Bloom? And I was like, oh my God, I love that title. So I wrote this whole screenplay. And then what was the funny part is Soma, the woman who was going to pose for me, because at that point, I really didn't want to do the photo shoot anymore because I would have had to tell her all this stuff that had come of it. But she said, hey, I'm ready to do that photo shoot. Do you think we can get our schedules together? And I'm like, oh boy. I decided to come clean. I don't know her, I'm like, look, that photo shoot that we didn't have actually happened in fiction, and it's really effed up.
In my mind, exactly.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to, in good conscience, I have to share this with you before we do this. Hopefully you're not going to think I'm some weirdo psycho nut. So she read it and was a real, she was a kindred spirit about the whole thing. And I always refer to her, she is Regina's godmother. But we actually did go out and do this photo shoot after. And I've used those photos many times for, references for how Regina should move and all. Yeah, I mean, to say this story is personal, and there's things. The main guy is based on a lot of stuff with my dad. He's a mechanic, and he's, his story resembles a lot of my father's story in the 60s, where, my dad was a very talented artist, but when he got out of Cooper School of Art in Cleveland, he had an offer to either make $50 a week for the plain dealer doing art illustrations or $100 a week doing auto work. He took the auto path, and he never really did much with his art after that, other than, teaching me things along the way. And you hear this conversation in Bloom, and it's very much, there's things with my grandma in it. And, the whole thing about the spirituality of it. Regina, what's funny too, is when people draw her, they'll sometimes give her, this sort of real nasty villain vibe, this evil, dark energy coming out of her hands. I'm like, that's not Regina. Regina's a prophet. The mainstream will not agree with her message. This is not someone who wants to just burn it all down. She's not looking for money. Regina's thing is, we tried to change the world peacefully in the 60s and it didn't stick. And now we're going to do it on my terms.
Wonderful.
So let me ask what Alan mentioned. What are some of your favorite music artists and albums? We talk a lot about music. We tend to go off way too long. So what do you like to listen to?
Man, music's been a huge part of my life. Like I was in rock bands. I did musical theater. I wrote 2 musicals. So I've gone the gamut. When I was first into guitar, I was into Kiss and Van Halen. Like people in high school called me Teddy Van Halen because I was always playing guitar. But then I really got into the swing stuff. Sarah Vaughan changed my life. Sam Cooke, not that he's swing, but his swing stuff is amazing. Frank Sinatra. I went through that whole thing, and then I got into musicals and Stephen Sondheim. But the Doors, my God, when I think about Regina, even in A Palm of Five, she's singing "Take It As It Comes" while she's carving the symbol onto his chest. If you look back at that page, she's singing "Take It Easy, Baby, Take It As It Comes," and I just love the idea of the whole cult just singing these rock songs from the '60s like they're church hymns, and whenever I'm working on Bloom, I've got Dylan or Hendrix, or I've got this long playlist of '60s stuff that I pull out for that. Yeah, I mean, any recommendations? I'm all ears. What? A quick side note to that is when we did our first photo cover, the woman who posed as Regina, Alicia Lynn, she came in from Pittsburgh. I met her at Steel City Con. She just immediately, when I met her, she was cosplaying right across from me as a character from this Heroinberg series. As soon as I spoke to her, I'm like, oh my God, you have such a Regina vibe. And I showed her Regina, and she was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And I said, well, tell me more about the character. Well, she dances in a band. She sings backup. She goes, I dance in a band and sing backup. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. It's just like Josie, who cosplays Tap Dance Killer, who is also an actor, just like Nikki St. Clair. I'm going all over the place here. But anyway, we did this photo shoot. She came to my studio about 3 weeks ago, and it was just all Doors. We listened to the Doors, probably every album while we were doing the photo shoot.
I really love the things you just shared about, like, that it's all metafiction. You see movies like Being John Malkovich, where, the line between who I am and what I'm putting into my work, and then after a while, maybe you don't keep a clear demarcation between that, and that's both wonderful and hazardous. And it sounds like there's an and that when coincidences happen in your life, you're like, I could kind of use this, and I don't think it's cheating. Like you said, you tried out 200 different artists for this. What kind of, how did you know? What kind of instructions did you give? Were you looking for gut feel? Did you have very strict criteria in mind? Were you looking for a collaborator or a kind of a commission? Just, I'll tell you what to do and you give it to me, as opposed to, I want to bounce story ideas off of you.
So, yeah, let's see. Some of the questions, trying to tackle them in order. With the artists, I was doing a search for both Bloom and Tap Dance Killer at the same time, because both there was a point at which I thought, all right, I want to do both of these series, and instead of doing two separate art searches, we put the call out, we described both projects. If you're interested in one or not the other or both, let us know. 200 people applied for both, combined, and mostly they would have taken either gig. To take the questions sort of in order, with the artists, I decided I wanted to do both Bloom and Tap Dance Killer at the same time. Like I thought, let's not do two artist searches. So we put the call out. Both books were mentioned in it, described, and we got 200 submissions. Initially I would look at the work that they had done. If if it was a style that I thought I could see on the book, I thought, all right, so they get into that category. And then we go through and see, how are their sequentials? Is this like a cover artist, or is this somebody that can actually tell a story? And, the 200 keeps getting whittled down. And then I would have them do a paid, not like a full price paid thing, but like an audition paid rate for an image of either character, depending on how I was feeling about them. So we would get these pinups of either Tap Dance Killer or Regina. And from that, I would be like, all right, now I'm going to give you a sample, whittled down again. Here's a sample page of action that I want you to lay out. And that will be also, a nominal fee that I paid to have, who knows, maybe 30 people do page layouts. It was in that process where it really got narrowed down. With Butch, I just immediately saw a Regina that I cared about. I just thought, and Donnie did an amazing image of Regina, which is one of our variant covers. But I didn't feel like she was approachable. She's almost like a goddess or something. But what he did with Tap Dance Killer was amazing. That he ended up getting that gig, and Butch got the Bloom. And with Milo, we're still kicking around Apama ideas. He's working on something now called the Heel, which is this wrestling book, completely unrelated to any of the stuff we've done in the past. The reason I did Tap Dance Killer solo is I the musical I wrote, Nothing Like Vaudeville, years ago, is where Tap Dance Killer was pulled from. Same with The Villain Sir Terror. And so I really had quite a lot. I mean, I've had those characters in my head for almost 25 years. I had a story I really wanted to tell, and he understood that. It's similarly with Bloom, when I created Regina, that whole thing, I mentioned how autobiographical that was, and that whole story. So that one also felt very personal, and I did wanted to tell that one. We're still close. We talk ideas quite a bit, movie ideas or what we want to do with Apama. The problem right now with Apama, we have issue 12 done. And now that we understand how we're going to be doing these things with Kickstarters, I think we have a way of kind of releasing it. There is only so much with a small company like Hero Tomorrow that we can put out really for the sake of quality. So you kind of just, for me as the president of the company, I have to go with what my gut tells me I should do next. And right now, Apama's been put on the back burner while these other characters develop.
Okay.
So do you have any preview of any other characters that are going to do offshoots on their own?
I have another character that I'm excited about, and she will debut in a issue 1 of her own. It'll be in the same universe. I won't say anything about her, but there's another one coming.
Well, you have to let us know.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Are you being courted, or do you have any possibility of you wanting to do? Is it a possibility that you're going to want to pursue that interesting world of merchandising? I've never been a person that buys dolls, if you will, and yet I'm always amazed at how when people talk about where they make their money, it's the Star Wars action figures, not the Star Wars movies. That there's just an incredible amount of beautiful. How cool is that? Okay.
I had for anyone who can't see this, I'm holding up an action figure that was done by a fan of Tap Dance Killer. This is a one-off, but I adore it. Yeah, we would love to do anything like that. In fact, I was at New York Comic Con a couple years ago when president of FYE, the mall shops, came up and they looked at the banner of Tap Dance Killer and said, "What is this character about?" And they said, "We've walked this entire floor, and this is one of 2 images that we're very interested in." And they set up some in-store signings. They helped me develop the first Tap Dance Killer T-shirt.
Wow.
So we, what was interesting at the signings though, people would buy the book. They didn't buy the shirt. So that didn't quite work out. We did 4 store signings. We came close with that one, and we're shopping around the intellectual properties to movie studios. That's been ongoing. So yeah, we're definitely interested in. Pie in the sky with this would be to do a TV series with it all, so it's not just Apama the movie or Tap Dance Killer.
Yes,
but a series that. And what I really like about that is tonally, I think we have 3 very different tones, and you've got the friendly ice cream truck driver vibe. You've got the vaudevillains with their strange theatrical vibe, but then you've got the woods with Regina and her sort of enlightenment. So I think it could be a really wild thing if we could get it all in one.
I love that too. We've talked about that, how the world has changed with the streaming and everybody doing their own TV shows, that people now aren't saying, "Oh, I want to make a movie of my book. Oh, I want to make a TV show of my book." That we can build the characters much more in those and explore many more territories, just like a series of comics rather than a one shot.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I always hope for, is that they are going to have that lightning in a bottle thing, where if some part of life is, well, I was doing my art while I was also playing in the real world. I had to work this job. I had to, whatever else it might be. You know what I mean? It's meant to be able to give people who are doing interesting work that might be world changing.
Yeah, no, you're right on the money with that. And this is really, this year, because of this release plan with both Diamond and Kickstarter, is the closest I think I'll ever, I've had to date to doing that. comics are really the main push of what I'm going to be doing this year, much more than, before it was always film and I was fitting in the comics as I could. This is quite the opposite. And it feels real nice, I know there's something that is so interesting to me, that just what happens if you keep making stories, that's what has kind of just surprised the hell out of me. Had we not just done this Apama series, none of this other stuff would have sprung out of it, and what's springing out of it is what's got me so excited now.
Would you, since you did The Hero Tomorrow, would you consider doing your own movie based on one of the other characters?
Well, we were shopping around Bloom as this, it's a pretty modest budget kind of movie. You got two people in the woods for 85% of it. And so we were trying to shop that around, and I would have been happy to direct it, if the right people would have come along to help with the production money and putting that whole machine behind it. We couldn't get that together, so made a comic. But yeah, anytime I would do it.
So are you still a consumer as well as a producer? What other artists, writers, TV shows, whatever things have like that special spark that you make a point of, oh, you got to catch this. This is really like nothing you've ever seen before. I love it. And any quick recommendations?
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah. Let's see. In the comic book world, I've really become disenchanted with Spider-Man again. This whole Kindred thing is awful. And, I came so close to writing Marvel a letter and saying, you've just lost your way with this character. However, I still get that. What I get now more are Kickstarter from other creators. I'm really, I'm so appreciative of the people who have supported mine. And when I see somebody else doing it, I'm excited much more for that than any of the mainstream stuff that's coming out right now. On the, there's people I follow though, like Mike Allred. Anything he does, I just love his style so much. He's got that robot something right now, X-Robot, or it's a fun project, very Mad Men-esque. I'm totally into the MCU with my wife and daughter. We've watched all that stuff, and Jada and I, my daughter, we watched WandaVision every episode twice. And when we've gone back, and I'm loving that series. I loved it from episode 1. I think I knew that it was going to go to some weird places, and we had to sort of establish this sort of thing at the beginning. That didn't bother me a bit. I know it turned off some people, but my God, it's great now.
Ted, we can't thank you enough. This is,
Yes.
said, you're our first. And it really was when Stephen and I were speculating who would we like to talk to, it really was, well, he's brilliant. He's a hometown guy. We both love your work. I gush, fanboy time, but I really can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us and giving us some insight into you and your work and your world. It's really, really cool. So thank you.
Yes.
It was my pleasure. You guys, this was a blast, and I love the questions. A lot of questions I've never been asked before, and it's wonderful. So and thank you again for the support you've given, these projects in the past. And maybe one last shout out. If you're hearing this before February 28th, just head over to Kickstarter, type in Bloom, and make sure you watch our crazy video. Our video's nuts.
Yes. Thank you.
That was great. Good talking.
Thank you for listening to Discovered Wordsmiths. Come back next week and listen to another author discuss the road they've traveled, and maybe, sometime in the near future, it might be you.